Hi, everybody. I'm not used to my back being to everybody, so I'm going to turn this around. First of all, I want to thank Georgia State, is it Georgia Southwestern State University for the invite, and it's really an honor to stand before all of you guys to speak about my work. I've been traveling, like I was saying, at the Panorama to a lot of the universities based on this particular body of work that I'm doing right now. But what I would like to talk to you about, me as a fine artist, a fine art photographer, and then I'll go into my 1969. So you get a little bit of an understanding of who I am and why I do what I do. First of all, my work is about contemporary culture. And the work that you see right here is called Plastic Bodies. In 2003, I was thinking about women of color in the Barbie doll. I was actually thinking about what do you call the ideal concept of beauty when it comes to Western culture, because a lot of women of color cannot fit that body type. So I started looking at the Barbie doll and doing some research, and mostly all women can't fit the Barbie doll. They've come out now with what they call the fashionettes, where it's supposed to be more realistic to the women's body type. But this particular body of work, I started morphing girls with Barbie dolls. And I started talking about, when have you seen a Barbie doll with dreads? And then on the back it's got 1999 Indonesia. I feel that we as people, everybody, that we brand ourselves, we have become plastic, and the Barbie doll has become human. And from there, I started working on another body of work called Suburbia, because in the media, what we always see when it comes to African American culture is the stereotype of urban America. And a lot of times that projected image is being portrayed in the media. And if anybody has not grown up around blacks, that's the perception that you see of blacks. So I went into Atlanta and into suburbia, and I called it Suburbia, and I went into black homes, and I didn't show people, and if I did, you would see maybe a lady laying in bed with a magazine. And this is when I became national in 2006. I received the Santa Fe Prize Award. It's called Center now. And it was so funny, when I went, I had to speak before publishers, editors, curators, and I had a headache, you guys, because the first day I had to have them look at my work, even though I won the prize, and they told me that I didn't have enough signifiers in this work to show that these were black homes, and it kind of stressed me out, and I'm like, how am I going to talk about it? That was the whole point. All of my work is about universal commonality amongst all people. And from there, I started thinking about the youth. And that was the time when President Obama was running for office. And like I said, in the Panorama, millenniums, you guys are the largest generation in history. You guys are going to make a change. And I wanted to take portraits of you. I traveled across the country, gave everybody a flag, and say, let's talk about America. And so this is Joshua, and he was talking about the civil rights movement and how far we came. And then in 2013, I decided to take them out and wheat paste them on walls. I went to Miami and Florida and Baltimore, Maryland. So in 2013, while I was working and thinking about young people, I felt that young people are the people that's going to make the change in the world, especially at our critical moment in our country right now. So I was looking at young people who changed the face of the nation during the civil rights movement, and I wanted to know who the unknown civil rights people were. And like I said before, I met Mr. Lonnie King, who founded the Atlanta Student Movement in Atlanta. And they said they were sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I actually photographed them. This is they're like 60 and 70 now. And this is Reverend Mack. And this is Jocelyn, and they were actually students at at Morris Brown at the time in 1960. And what I did was I took them and I wheat pasted them on walls in the cities. And from there, that's when 2013 came about, and I wanted to talk about generations and the civil rights movement and the movement that's going on right now, and that's why I called it 1960 Now, because the young people today feel like they're fighting the same fight that their grandparents and their parents are fighting. And I traveled to, well, I'm going to talk about this. This was actually my show it premiered at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Atlanta, Georgia, where it's similar to, if you guys haven't seen it yet, in the Fine Art Building, I have a small replica, and it's a chalkboard where I like to make it interactive for people to put their thoughts on it, and it has the video and some of the faces. But with this, I put them on the floor instead of on the thing. And this is Mr. Lonnie King, the co-founder of the Atlanta Student Movement. This is Dr. Rosalind Polk that went to Spelman. She actually wrote the authored the Appeal for Human Rights. This is Mr. Charles Black, and he became the president of the Atlanta Student Movement when Mr. King actually left. And this is Mamie Chambers. She's in the famous iconic photograph of Charles Moore, photographer back in the 60s, in Birmingham when they were hosing African Americans and they were pinned up on a wall. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that image. I don't have my right presentation. I usually have that. And she is 70 years old right now. And this is Miss Evelyn Hall that marched with Martin Luther King during the Poor People campaign in Chicago. This is Farron Manuel. He's actually an actionist. I call myself an actionist because a lot of times when you talk about activism, people put that in one type of category. I'm a person that takes action and through my photography, through art activism. And what I'm doing is, this is Pastor West. This is, I don't know if these are your peers, you guys. This is on Kwame Rose. I don't know if any of the young people saw the video when the uprising was in Baltimore, where Kwame Rose confronted Gerardo Rivera when they came into the neighborhood. Did anybody see that video? Nobody. Wow, you guys on social media. Okay, I'll show parts of it. This is Ariel. She started an organization at the age of 18, It's Bigger Than You, in Atlanta. And she is the one that, let me try to explain the Black Lives Movement, okay? Like I said, in 2013, it was 3 young black females that was really distraught about what happened with Trayvon Martin and then the Mark Zimmerman when he actually was let go. And they wanted to uplift African Americans because it was like James Brown, I'm black and I'm proud, to give us some kind of upliftment. And that's what it was all about. And they actually put a hashtag on it and called it Black Lives Matter. So what happens now, it has become a brand. And way the media picked it, it picks it so negative. Anybody could be affiliated with Black Lives Matter, but you have to look at it as a brand, because a lot of people are using it for their agenda too. But you could go onto blacklivesmatter.com and actually look at what they're about. And you have a lot of organizations are doing a lot of things. But this is actually one of your peers too. This is Bree Newsom. She's the one that climbed the flagpole in South Carolina and took down the Confederate flag. And I asked her what made her want her to do it, and she says that ever since I was a little girl, it was something that I always wanted to do, and I had the opportunity to do it, so she went ahead and to do it. And all of them are actually making history. This is like the new civil rights movement. And this is Devin Allen. Devin Allen is the young man that Lakeisha spoke about, if anybody was at Panorama, where he actually photographed the uprising in Baltimore. And what happened, like I said, I was there, but I happened to be in D.C. when all that happened. And if you are just looking at the news, you cannot believe everything that you see on the news. What happened, I wasn't there at the uprising, but what Devin and all of them told me is that they were doing peaceful marching down on the harbor. And what happened is it the baseball game, Keisha, that they have? Yeah. And the people, when they were marching, start calling them the N-word and calling them monkeys. So that's what started the explosion with that. And what happened is that he documented it, he photographed it. He went to the newspapers, the local newspaper in Baltimore, and say, hey, I have these images. He showed the good and the bad. He showed of it all. He wasn't just one-sided with it. They weren't thinking about him. So what he did was, I'm going to curate this work on Instagram. So he took action, and he curated his own show on Instagram, and Time Magazine is the one that saw it, and he got the cover of Time Magazine. I don't know if you guys saw it. It was like a man that had a bandana around his mouth, and he was running, and it said 1960, and it was crossed out to 2015. And that's Devin Allen's image, and he's the first, young African-American that's ever been on the cover of Time Magazine. And he took action. So the first of the year, I felt, because you saw those were portraits that I took, I felt that me as an artist, that I need to be on the ground to really understand what was going on and not believing everything that I see on the media. So I actually started getting involved with the young people, and I was collectively with them. So anything that go down, they would text me. And so January of last year, they texted me. They said, Sheila, we're getting ready to shut down the Martin Luther King parade. I said, okay. I was there at 12 o'clock. These young people actually took over the parade. And the image that you see with the flag is bigger than you, reclaim Martin Luther King. The cops and the people on the sideline were very, very upset. I'm a very, an observer. They seemed like they were very upset, but they couldn't do anything about it with the young kids, and the cops said they didn't took over the goddamn parade. So they let them take over it. So by the time they went to the Martin Luther King Center, they have like a podium, everybody is speaking. They took over that. The elders were mad. These were African Americans. They were very upset with them. And what the young people were talking about when they hashtag Reclaim Martin Luther King Day, they are sick and tired of the commercialization of Martin Luther King. I have a dream. He was much more than having a dream. He was about equality, economics, and all of that. And so they said, we are young people, and this is Ariel doing a demonstration. They would stop in the middle of the streets, and for the first time that I saw in Atlanta, they were having signs about Black trans lives matter too. Because believe it or not, within the movement, it's a large LGBT community in the movement. And these are all from Atlanta. I'm gonna go through this. White silence in the South still equal death. And this was when, are you guys familiar with Janelle Monáe, the artist? Okay. Well, she came to downtown because she got Hell What You Talking About. That was a song that she actually made for the movement, and she actually marched, and they shut down the streets in Atlanta. That picture reminded me actually of something in the 60s, actually. And this is her right here. It was Say Her Name. And this is one of her artists. What is his name, Keisha? And I thought, what I try to do in my images versus what you see in the media, you always see the rage and the anger of that. I try to find the compassion when I'm out in the streets with people. I mean, you see this young Black male and there's tears coming down his eye because it's very emotional being out there with those songs. And you might look at this image as defiant, but I look at it as very confident, very hurt, and very sad. And I chose to do this. She actually had a liberation flag, black, red, and green, holding up like this, and she was stepping on the American flag. That's something that we always see. But I was more interested in her eyes and what she was portraying with that. Then Baltimore. My next stop was Baltimore. I actually went to Baltimore after the aftermath, and I'm telling you guys, when Ferguson, I'm sorry, Ferguson, I felt so much tension in the air. I've never felt that before when I going to these rallies and stuff. But people have so much, I wouldn't call it anger, I say frustration. Can you imagine that, living into these communities and they're being blocked for economic reasons, and it's constantly, they're trying to find jobs. I talked to a young male. He said, I've tried to go to the grocery store to get a job. And I said, well, what are you wearing? You have your pants hanging down? He said, no, I'm wearing my Sunday clothes. I can't find a job. He said, so can't find a job. And it's all about frustration. This is all in Ferguson. And when we got to the police station, they had it all wrapped up. And the people just went across there, and the troopers came out with their sticks and stuff. Nobody was hurt at that time because of what was happening in the media with that, but it was a lot. And this is Mike Brown Sr.'s father. He's got Mike Brown Chosen for Change. And this is them when they're out there, Justice for Mike. We love our people, and we'll be here until justice is served. And this is Mike Brown, too, his father, Senior. I want to show confidence. It's Ferguson, too. My next stop was actually in Baltimore, but I happened to be the Justice League of New York. And this is a group from out of New York. And they actually march, I don't know if you heard about this, they actually marched from New York to D.C. to deliver a package to Congress. And I don't know if anybody watched Empire. Jessup, he is an activist, he's an actor and a singer. And you have all nationalities, Muslim, Latinos, and Black. This is when they were in D.C. And they did what you call a die-in there, and they didn't get arrested with that. So, I'm gonna play this. Oh, you guys are not gonna be able to hear that. You can't. I forgot we don't have audio. He said they don't live around here. You guys can't hear that, can you? So I'm going to go on. So that Sunday when Freddie passed away at the hospital, that Monday, they actually started doing the protests. Protests were very peaceful. They were, in Baltimore, they're very, very fierce. They were protesting 24/7. I have never seen anything like that before. I was actually running when I was photographing. I wasn't walking, actually running with this. They say all night, all day, we're gonna fight for Freddie Gray. And when I went into West Baltimore, I'll have to tell this story again, is that I'm not from West Baltimore, but when I stepped into West Baltimore, I was so amazed because I felt like I was in a third world country. I've been to Detroit, but it's something that's different about Baltimore. And I was so amazed, I wanted to photograph like the landscapes. I couldn't believe it. And there was a male and a woman. They cussed me out. They told me to get the hell out. They said, we don't want you here, white people here, or the media here, because all you do is when you come into our communities, you talk about the negative. You never talk about the positive. So I had to really think, like, how am I going to get them to, I could connect with them. And I told them I said, do you guys remember Don Lemon that was on CNN? And when they had the uprising in Ferguson, that's what the young people call it, uprising. And he said that he smelled marijuana in the air. They said, "You're damn right." I said, "Yeah." I said, "That was messed up." I'm not going to tell you what I really said, but that was messed up. And so they allowed me to come in because they don't trust anybody. And when I was there, they have a police station there, and you see the cops. They all circled around with the cars. Everybody is screaming and yelling at each other. For me, it was a sense of sadness. I saw kind of, I don't know if I want to say fear within the officers. It was just a sadness on both ends of the spectrum. And then you see the news people, they come in, "We're here in Baltimore." And I just thought that was just so surreal. And they constantly say, "We don't want you here." When I was in Ferguson, the young people, Fox 26 was there, they took a flag, I don't have those pictures, American flag, and held it up. So he could not tape anything. He stayed there like this. They stayed there like that. They were going off on him. He finally put it up, and they said, "Get the hell up out of here. We don't want you here because all you're doing is reporting bad news." This looked like something in the 60s. We started marching down in West Baltimore. This is West Baltimore. It was always with the hands up. Hands. So in 2016, there was a lot of disruption last year, and 2015, they actually just started a Black Lives Matter chapter in Atlanta, and I went out the first of the year. It's like, black bodies, we are not disposable. Be a part of the solution or get out of our way. I wish I could play this, but I'm not. But the whole thing of it is me as an artist, I'm using this particular body of work to speak out about the injustice and the criminal justice system here in America, because we have so many black bodies that are in mass incarceration. And that's something that I don't think maybe all of us get. I'm not putting that off on anybody. I didn't really understand it either and how it was used. There's a book that's called The New Jim Crow Law, where people of color, brown and black, and how there's droves and numbers of them in jail, you know, behind that. I mean, they could get, I used to teach young kids, I hate to use this word in urban America, and one of the ones, James, he called me and he said, "Miss Sheila, I found you." He found me on the internet. I said, "He's 22 now. I taught him when he was 15 years old." I said, "What have you been doing?" Got real quiet. He said, "I've been in jail." I said, "For what?" Got quiet again. He said that he had some, I don't know, it wasn't, I don't think it was coke or rock. What's that drug that they do for girls or whatever, something like that? I don't know what kind of drug, but they got him on a felony and he's got 6 years. Now he's out, he's trying to do right. He's working for McDonald's, but it's not enough money. He has 2 or 3 kids, you know? So it's the system that's actually kind of failing him. So I'm using this particular body of work for my art activism and to talk about race in America, and race do matter. So if anybody have any questions, you guys can ask me. And I think it's very important to be on the ground and don't believe everything that you see on the news, because it's sound bites. That's all it is sound bites, because I saw it. I saw it when the TV people would be right in your face like this, and they say, "Get out of my face," and then when you see it, they're cussing them out or hitting them, right? That kind of thing. And it's sad. It's really sad. So I feel that you have to take the initiative. You don't have to do anything, but take the initiative to go out there and investigate on your own. And don't take my word for it. Just go out there and investigate and find out who your peers are, whether they're black, Asian, or white, or whatever, because like I said, you young people, y'all the biggest generation in history. Y'all can make something happen with all this hatred that's going on in America. It seems like we didn't step back into the 60s. They took away the black signs and the white signs, but it didn't go anywhere. That attitude, the ideologies didn't go anywhere. So with that being said, I'm going to be quiet. Anybody have any questions?
So, since now the crowd has shifted a bit, and you're seeing mostly art majors in the room.
Oh, okay.
Your work.
Okay.
I'd like for you. I've followed your work since Plastic Body.
Okay.
And what I find interesting as a photographer, one photographer to another,
Mm-hmm.
is your work has shifted from being specifically very controlled and very clean, work designed for a gallery. And now it's doing this interesting mix between it's like editorial work that then is crossing into public art, that's then going back to gallery. Can you talk a little bit about those shifts and like even seeing the young American watching it go from being this clean, very high key lighting, white background, to then being wheat pasted
on the
China,
ground.
with now the flag looks tattered. It seems conceptually very different, even though it's the same photograph. Could you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, my experience as a artist didn't come about until I started going to school. I'm actually a self-taught photographer, and I started actually, and I don't have some of those images, I started in the streets. I was around the culture of gangster rap. You guys are probably too young. Have you heard of Scarface? Oh, y'all have? Okay, I'm not that old. I was the girl in Houston, Texas, where I was really, really naive, okay? I wanted to photograph the rappers. So they would, so I would engage with them, right? And they would say, well, you gotta come over to the house. I said, well, why I gotta come over to the house and photograph? They said, come over to the house. 12 young men were at the house, and they were drug dealers. Sheila didn't know that, okay? And so they come out with these AKAs. I should have those images. I don't show those too much. And I asked them, I said, are those real? They looked at it, they said, where you come from? You like a white girl in a black body? Yeah, they real. So that's where the street came from. I have a lot of imagery like that because I was around. You straight out of Compton, right? I photographed Ice Cube, okay? He came down to Houston, and I was the girl. So what happened was, I'm trying to get to your point, okay? What happened is that I've always taken, I'm an Army brat, and I was always around diversity, okay? But I was really kind of sheltered being an Army brat. I mean, my father's on the service, we would move. I lived in Germany. My formal years, when I was young, I lived in Germany, and as a child, I didn't understand this. People would touch our skin and our hair, and my mother would let them, like, well, why do you want to touch our skin and our hair? I didn't understand that, so I think me looking back on that, I'm always an observant of people, and I love people. I like to know why they do what they do. So going back to the gangster rap stuff, I had a friend that was an artist. I didn't know nothing about the arts, okay? He says, you need to be in a show. I didn't know what that was about. He said, I'm gonna have a curator. Do you guys know what a curator is? Okay, curator is the one that curates shows for galleries or different spaces. And he said, I'm going to have him come over because your work need to be in the show. So when the curator came, he thought I was going to have some cute little fashion stuff. I have shots with gun culture where this guy by the name of Class C, I don't have that image up too, I was in the woods, you guys. He had coke, money, guns, okay? And we was up there photographing for a cover. And that back then it was film, and I told him to point the gun at me. He said, you want me to point this gun at you? I said, point the gun at me. And he went like that. That was my last shot, and I blurred him out, and all you saw was the bullet hole. I had my first show in Houston, Texas, of portraits of rappers. And that's how I got into the art world. I didn't know nothing about the art world at all. And I left and I went to Atlanta. So you see an element of that with my work, actually. It's still there. Because when I went to school to get my MFA, I thought everybody was crazy. They were talking about all this conceptual stuff. People would photograph themselves nude, putting needles in. I'm like, what is going on? I didn't understand it, okay? And so that's where I learned how to be conceptual, but I still kept the other half that I learned from my experience, okay? And I think that's what Tanya is seeing in my work. You see the clean images of just portraits. I took the elements out of so you could just look at the people. Even with the suburbia, you haven't seen a lot of it. It's the same thing. It's like a study that I'm doing. But what I found when I graduated, for me as an artist, I was never really concerned about galleries because I shouldn't say this. They don't teach us really about the galleries and stuff in colleges, right? I was always focused on my work, and everything came to me. That's how I won that award in Suburbia. A curator that saw my Young American images, he said, "Oh my God, I got to help you with that." I got $300,000 from the Aetna Foundation and traveled around the country with that. And when I photographed that, I wanted to do portraiture, but I didn't want the elements in there. I just wanted a clean background, okay? And I gave them a flag, and they did whatever they want with the flag. I didn't tell them what to do with that. But what happened to me was in 2012, when an organization called Living Walls said, "We want you to take your stuff and put it in the streets." That brought me back to the streets. And that's where I really get a lot of my gratification from, because I'm connecting to the people and the masses of the people, instead of being in the white walls. When you're in the art world, you're in the museum, it's clean and everybody's, like that, it's for the elite. But to really, I'm in both of those worlds, but I really like connecting with the people, and that's why when you see the work of just the protest images, I really enjoy that, because I think you can get kind of lost with your conceptionist as an artist, and you have these concepts and ideas, but I feel that it's very important to be connected to the people. And that's why you see kind of a shift in my work a lot, through portraiture, through editorial, and all that. So I think nobody knows how to, I say fine art photographer, but they don't know what category to put me in, because it seems like I'm all over the place. So did that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
What's the vibe like in Atlanta? What's the art scene like?
Well, you want me to speak the truth?
Yeah.
Everybody says Atlanta's going to be the next art place to look at. Based on my perspective as an artist, I graduated in 2003 with my MFA. A lot of my work that I have done is outside of Atlanta. There's a lot of people that are trying to do a lot of things in Atlanta, and you have Michael Rooks at the High Museum. He's doing a lot of good things. I don't know if you're familiar with him. And then you have Brett, he's the curator, Brett Abbott, the curator of photography. So it's coming up, but it's not coming up, because you still got artists that are actually leaving Atlanta, but it is a room for growth. I mean, for you to go to New York, you might be, like it's too many of you, but I have been fortunate enough that I'm based in Atlanta. When I go out of Atlanta, people, they don't get it. They see everything on my Facebook, I say Atlanta. And they say, you live in New York? You live in there? But I think it has good potential, because they're just going to open up a gallery in Atlanta right now, and this gallery person from New York is coming to Atlanta. They're going to have 900 square feet. So he says that there's a lot of potential in Atlanta, because you have a collector base of people that hasn't been tapped into from 35 to 55. And Michael Rooks is doing a lot of good things. He's the curator of contemporary art at the High Museum. So it has a lot of potential. It has a lot of potential. Yeah. Yeah, but I think the arts too. Yeah, the arts too. Yeah. Bye. Yeah. Is that it? Anybody have any more questions? What kind of major is it? Photography? Is it mixed media, graphic design, or what?
Psychology.
Oh, psychology? Oh, okay. Not a lot of artists. Oh, okay. Photography major? all I could just tell you is just work on your craft. Just produce work, and it'll come to you. That's what happened to me, you know, with that. And you could use anything through your artwork to talk about what you want to talk about. It doesn't have to be activism, you know. The Barbie dolls was about body image, believe it or not, and that work was produced in 2003, and it went viral in 2012 or 13 on Huffington Post. I had over 500 comments. It scared me to death, y'all. Everybody was going off and stuff. So it doesn't have to be about activism. It's just this 1960 now is a new body of work, and it happens to be about that, actually. Yeah. So you talk about it, and I think art has a way that you can create dialogues where we could bring people together. My whole thing is about bringing everybody together. It's not just bringing black folks together, white folks together, you know, Asian together. It's about all of us, because we do have one universal commonality, and we all want the same thing. But I think what holds us back really is fear, because we don't know, and we don't do an investigation about it. And I'm talking about on both sides. So I'm done. And thank you. Thank you.